Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about arguments, and we're going to talk about how arguments have context. And as you can see from this picture, there's something wrong with the road sign because it has no context. It says you can go in two different directions, but really you can go in any direction. So context is literally what surrounds an argument. It's everything that goes around it. And it's a lot of the things that we've talked about when we use soapstone. It's an argument's format. Okay, the immediate context. Is it in a newspaper? Is it an advertisement? Is it on the internet? Is it in a book? Is it on a web page? Is it a conversation with someone? It's the physical location where it takes place. You'll have a very different argument at your kitchen table versus having an argument in a classroom or in front of a crowded auditorium. And it's your audience. You are always going to tailor your argument to your audience, and that's speaker-audience relationship, something that we've looked quite a bit at with rhetorical strategies. If you're arguing something with a 5-year-old, it's going to be a different argument than if you're having the same argument with a group of educated medical personnel, as it should be. Location, format, and audience are the immediate context, but context also has a broader focus, okay? And that would be occasion when we talk about soapstone. This has very specific context. It has background knowledge that it's counting on you to have. It's assuming that you know who the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are, and it's assuming that you know the story of the tortoise and the hare. If you don't know either of those things, then this argument, this cartoon, makes no sense to you. This is a book cover title, I'm with Stupid, and it again implies some cultural knowledge. You have to know about Adam and Eve, you have to know about Christianity, you probably know the phrase I'm with Stupid, and that gives it different context. One man, one woman, 10,000 years of misunderstandings between the sexes cleared right up. This does not make sense if you have none of the historical and cultural context. This is another particularly interesting one. The Empire Strikes Again, the Gulf Wars. If you think about 200 years from now, they might think of this as a poster, a movie poster, because it certainly looks like one. But it implies certain context, certain background knowledge that the audience is going to have. Okay? It assumes that you've seen Star Wars and perhaps Star Wars parodies, such as Spaceballs, which is pictured here. It assumes that you know some of the people that are in the poster and that you have knowledge of who they are as not actors, but politicians and people who were working in Washington. It assumes that you have knowledge of the Iraq War and the Gulf Wars. And it also goes into a long and rich history of protest propaganda. Without any of those things, people don't understand what this means. So having that broader cultural, historical background knowledge is very important for understanding the context of something.
Did you know that 52% of the calories in a Big Mac come from fat? Ugh.
It's a short little ad by Adbusters, 15-second television spot. Think about it for a second. Is that a persuasive argument? Are you going to go out and eat a Big Mac now? Does it make you hungry watching it, or does it make you disgusted to think about how many of the calories come from fat? The more context we add, the more layers we add to the argument. For example, if you find out a little bit about Adbusters, Adbusters is a corporation that is dedicated to examining the relationship between human beings and their physical and mental environment. And one of the things about this ad that's very interesting is that commercial television networks refuse to sell Adbusters airtime for this 15-second commercial because they did not want to offend the fast food industry. And they relate it to the next big tobacco. We're loving it. So that gives you further context and in fact makes the ad a little bit more persuasive knowing that background information. Total calories in a Big Mac is 600. Total calories from fat is 300. Gives you further context for the piece. And this is especially interesting, this ad. This is obesity trends between 1991 and 2002. And less than 10%, 10 to 14%, 15 to 19, 20 to 24, and over 25%. And if you look at nobody was 20 to 24% even in 1991. By 2002, you have red states that are over 25% with obesity levels. There's nobody who's in the 10 to 14 range anymore. Okay, and you can imagine this was last done in 2002. So you can imagine a more recent obesity trends. So does this change the perspective of the argument? Does it make it more effective having this context and knowing about the obesity problem? It does. So the bottom line is that the more context that an argument has, the more background information, the more cultural information, the better the argument is going to be. Okay, sometimes you don't need to give that context. Sometimes it's implied. Sometimes you can assume that your audience knows it. And that's knowing who your audience is, the speaker-audience relationship. That's knowing how you are presenting that information. So that is everything on context, which once again ties very closely to occasion and to audience speaker, occasion, and audience when we talk about Soapstone. Have a great afternoon.